Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome,
Boys and girls.
to boys and girls, or anybody who identifies as anything else. Well, welcome to episode 31 of the Esoterica podcast. And this time we're recording closer to our normal time. We're recording on a Saturday morning, rather than Monday like we did last week. So we managed to get together on Saturday morning, just before Anthony runs off to football.
Literally run off.
Yeah. So it's nice to be back. It's nice to be back here. It's school holidays. I'm excited.
Oh, I didn't even realise.
Yes,
so you're on holiday.
Just
Fantastic.
started school
just
holidays.
as you finish the show.
Yeah, it's gonna
Timing.
be brilliant.
Fantastic.
It's gonna be brilliant. I'm looking forward to some sleep and doing
Very good.
absolutely nothing.
Oh, wonderful. I didn't realise that. That's very cool.
It's great. And also, show's finishing tonight, so last show tonight.
Yep,
Which
final
means we are back to our dual streaming and stuff like that.
Yep.
So we're back and ready to go.
We are.
Which will be awesome. Right, so beer of the week this week. Beer of the week is the Yank Deck American Pale Ale from Harrington's Breweries down there in Christchurch.
Yep.
Which is rather appropriate this week.
It is. We're all celebrating July 4th.
Absolutely. We're all big into American independence
We
here.
are.
Esoterica
part of
supports
our
American independence.
We do. Sorry, my British heritage and whatnot. That's it.
So another American Pale Ale. We seem to have been going for quite a number of the American Pale Ales recently. But what are you thinking of the Yank Deck?
I really like it, and I really like it because, unlike a lot of American Pale Ales, quite often they go quite overboard with how hoppy it is and with the alcohol content. It's not uncommon to see a American Pale Ale that's like 8%.
Yeah.
Whereas this is actually quite modest. It's a
4.7,
4.7, which is what you'd expect from your typical New Zealand beer, between 4.5 and 5%.
Yep.
More along the lines of a Pale Ale.
Yep.
I really enjoy it. The taste isn't overwhelming. It's just it really it just glides. It's really nice, and it's the kind of beer you could quite easily have a couple of, and not
really.
It's not your intense sort of craft beers that are fighting for space in your taste buds. You know what I mean?
It's quite light. That's actually
is.
was going to be my comment. Is that it's quite light and I'm trying to avoid saying very drinkable, but it's very light. It's as you said, I could easily imagine sitting down and having a couple without sort of feeling
100%.
really bloated or like how the flavor becomes a bit much after a while with some craft beers and that sort of stuff. So on the only scale that matters, what are you going to give the Yank Deck from Harrington's Breweries down there in Christchurch?
I would give it a 8.3.
Ooh.
Yeah, I really like
really
it.
Enjoy it.
And I think it just sort of hits a good balance.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like it.
Nice.
Actually.
Well, I'm going to give it an 8. So I'm really enjoying it too. So good solid beer there from Harrington's Breweries. So Harrington's Breweries do as well. They do a mix box as well, like a mix 6 or whatever else like that. So if you're wanting to sort of get into a craft beer, but you're sort of not like,
you don't want to commit to it.
Yeah, you're sort of like, I don't know where to start, or I don't know. Go for like a mix 6 or something like that, and then you can sort of try a whole heap of different things and
like a sampler
see what you think.
box.
Yeah, like a sampler box, which is quite good. And really, for a craft beer, really reasonably priced. So like I think a dozen of this is about $25, I think.
That's
which
really
is
good.
Which is really reasonable for a craft beer.
Absolutely.
A local craft beer.
Yeah.
So really good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Right. Moving into what's on top.
What's on top?
So what's on top this week is actually something. It's actually something a little bit funny, and it's actually something that we were talking about, or the cast and crew of Virginia Woolf have been talking about. Shout out to everybody in Virginia Woolf. Hello, I know you all listen. So it was something that we were talking about backstage the other night, and I can't quite remember how this came up, but we were talking. I think we were talking about like grey hair or wisdom highlights, as Collier says, and we were talking about going grey because obviously once the show's gone, I can finally get rid of the blonde, which I'm quite looking forward to. I'm quite looking forward to getting.
You don't like the Clockwork Orange?
I really don't. I'm really not enjoying the blonde. So I'm looking.
You don't
forward
like
to...
looking like an anime character?
I'll just spike it up sideways.
You should.
Having more fun, James?
Oh, you don't blondes have more fun? Have you had more fun?
No, I've been a lot more tired. Have I had more fun? No.
Okay,
So
Krautrock James is going to be gone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm going to. I've finished my '80s David Bowie phase, and I'll be moving on.
Brian
now.
Eno's
Yeah,
going.
yeah, that's right. So I'm going to. I was thinking about what should I do with my hair, and look, if you have suggestions for what I should do with my hair, stick them up in the Discord.
We'll do a poll.
Well, yeah, do a poll. Good God, that could be horrific.
It could be. Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm kind of in that awkward situation where I'm sort of like, I could just dye my hair back, so I could just go and get a dark brown black dye and just go back to being dark. But I was kind of like, this presents a unique opportunity. It presents a unique opportunity to color my hair in a different way because it's already been stripped out. It's already blonde.
Yeah.
Because normally, if you have very, very dark hair and you want to do something a little bit out there, you have to strip all the color out of it first and then dye over the top of it. So I was like, it sort of presents a unique opportunity to go the other way. And I thought I might go grey. Do the whole grey.
Do it.
But with like black highlights, because I thought that would look quite cool.
Yeah, do it.
And I was talking about this, and I was like, that way, whenever my hair grows back, you won't see the greys. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
And we were talking, so this is how we got on to talking about the fact that grey hair on an older man becomes quite distinguished. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we tend to call distinguished older men with grey hair silver foxes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a good example of this is, I don't know, somebody like George Clooney, right? And we were talking about the fact that it's really weird because you have a name like Silver Fox to describe a distinguished older gentleman who's good looking grey hair, that sort of stuff. But there's no real female equivalent.
No, there's not.
And so this got us talking to sort of about things like this, where there are certain terms for things that have no equivalent in the other gender. So we're gonna talk about a couple of those. So I've got three that I can think of, sort of as we've been going through. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk a little bit about them. And what I want us to do is try and come up with an opposite gender term.
Yeah.
That's gonna match. Okay. So silver fox is obviously the first one, right? So a silver fox is a distinguished older gentleman who's good looking with grey hair, right? Like, that sort of stuff. It implies attractiveness. It implies, it.
I think when you said distinguished, that's a good way of It's someone who looks like they've experienced life.
Yeah.
And but it hasn't worn them down enough that
like you get that whole, sort of I don't know, that mental image of a, good looking older man with like, the slight short
walnut pine bookshelves.
Yeah.
In a Remu disc.
Yeah.
With a globe on it.
Absolutely. Yes. With a drinks globe. And like.
Basically, a Handmaid's Tale commander.
yeah, pretty much. Like, but it's a positive thing, right?
It is. It's a positive.
To be called a silver fox would be a positive thing.
You'd be sure.
Like, oh, that implies, erudition or like a little bit like the meme, the what is it, the gentleman meme, the guy with the beard, the world's most, you know that.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It's too early in the morning. I can't remember what it's called. But that sort of silver fox-esque. And so there's no real female equivalent. I was trying to think of what a female equivalent to that would be. An older, distinguished
Helen
woman.
Mirren.
Yeah.
Or like a Judi Dench kind of thing.
Yeah, Helen Mirren would be one.
That would be the equivalent. But how would you describe
what would
that?
be the terminology?
See, the problem, and we've sort of talked about, James and I, this is a subject we've talked about a lot in the past, about how in the entertainment industries and in acting and in theatre, with roles, so as men get older, they still have many opportunities going forward for roles in shows and things. And
In fact,
musicals.
your opportunities almost open up more
Well,
as
they
you get older.
they
Yeah.
do, and I think a lot of that has to do with historically. Historically, there's a big correlation, especially with the very old musicals in the 50s and 60s, of the older man getting with the younger girl.
Yeah.
And back then, of course, that was completely socially acceptable. And I think, and of course, so there's plenty of roles for older men. Whereas if you're a woman, you sort of get to a point where the roles start closing up for you.
Yeah.
So your role is the
it's
the bombshell or the
It's quite early. It's like
it's
in your
very
it's,
early.
It's in your 20s, really. Like
Yeah, it is.
You know,
It
whereas
is.
for a man in their 20s, you're still young. Like
Yeah.
you're still considered to
Yeah.
be young. Like those roles start to. I mean, unless you're playing a Danny in Greece or you know what I mean, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like. Really, roles start opening up to you in your 30s. Like, there's still a number of roles. I sit there and I go, I'm too young to do that.
Yeah.
I'm too young to do that. I'm too
Yeah.
young to do that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas I
for
think
sure.
Ladies, it's a bit more difficult.
Well,
Yeah.
it is, and you start to, as a woman, you get to a point where you're in your like late 30s, early 40s, where you're now going for the older roles, like the
nurses,
like the matron, the
comic relief character parts,
and so you become an old woman, and there's this very, very definitive change.
Yeah.
Whereas with men, you don't see that as much, and that's probably more of an indictment on how like we sexualize like theatre and things, and you know,
or stories
stories in
how we
general,
tell stories,
and you know, whereas if you know an older man, you know this wise, stronger,
protective
man, and so women don't get that necessarily when they're older. I think it's changing a bit, but what would you call what would you?
And I think Helen Mirren is a good example of this. I think Helen Mirren is if you had to picture somebody that would be the female equivalent of a silver fox, Helen Mirren's a good shout. That's a good shout. What would you call one? So you know me, I'm a bit of a fan of alliteration. So So if I had to call them something,
you know me, I'm a bit of a fan of
alliteration. Absolutely, I love.
There's one thing you know about me.
One thing. I'm a bit of a fan of alliteration. I think. You see, I the thing that jumped into my head was was Steel Seductress, but I think that's
that's not bad.
Yeah, but I think that's a little bit hard.
Yeah.
So why not Silver Siren?
Silver Siren, yep.
Yeah.
But sirens have
Sounds
that
like
negative connotation of like, if you're a sailor, you're like,
no. But you know,
like sirens in the same category as like Banshee.
The reason that so the reason I kind of went siren, right, is
sailors were terrified of women.
I know, but the same thing in like. Terrified of women. They were so desperate for a woman that they started looking at manatees and go, oh look, it's a mermaid. Yeah, it's Ariel.
So deficient in vitamin C and it's what happens. It's like any like congregation of men lost and like who have been isolated from women. They all become incels. So sailors were the incels of their day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
it just goes to prove that we really are hopeless without women.
Yeah.
I think that but okay, so the reason I went siren, because I was thinking about this. The reason I went with siren because fox also has connotations of like not sly, but you know crafty and sleek and like so that's why I went Silver Siren. I don't know what you know. What do you think? Have you got something floating around there?
Well, the first thing I thought of, but of course you can't use this because it already applies to, and because I thought alliteration, I thought femme fatale, but that doesn't really necessarily apply. It's usually again a younger woman.
Well, now I've got a fourth thing to try and work out another equivalent for.
Well, that's right, because that's what I was. I was thinking, what's the equivalent of that?
Yeah.
And. So I think Siren's better than Seductress because again it like because it doesn't necessarily imply that their one thing like their one goal in life is to seduce.
It's sexual promiscuity. Yeah.
Whereas a Siren it has this kind of, but the fact that it invokes fear in sailors gives it points.
Yeah, that's right.
Poor sailors.
All right, should we go with
You're getting a hard time.
Should we go with Silver Siren? Then?
Yeah, I like Silver. I actually really like that. The more I think about it, the more, and it's so like alarming.
It sounds a little bit like a
Get it? Alarming.
Yeah.
Sirens are alarms too.
I always find jokes better when you explain them.
Yeah.
I think that now I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. I think
So
Silver
blown
Siren.
away by that.
Yeah, just blown away by the joke. Silver Siren sounds a little bit like a Marvel superhero character. Like it's like you know,
it's
the
like
Silver Siren.
Silver Surfer's sister. Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, the Silver Siren. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like that.
It's
Actually,
okay.
Good one.
So there you go.
Good one.
Esoterica approved. Silver
Yeah.
Siren.
Yeah.
That's what we're going for. Okay. Well, seeing as you brought up femme fatale, let's look at femme fatale. Because femme fatale is a younger, very attractive woman who generally sort of oozes sex. A femme fatale. And is dangerous. You know, there's danger implied in a femme fatale.
Quite often used to, especially you see it a lot in like wartime films.
Yeah,
because
noir
they're
films,
spies or
yeah.
noir,
Yeah.
like they're spies or they're informants or something.
The
like
young woman
that.
who comes into the old Gumshoes office at the beginning, you know, with the cigarette and the you know the light
long
and
coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dress suit, like
Yes,
you know, with the jacket. Yeah, femme fatale.
Yeah.
So a male equivalent for a femme fatale. There's no real male equivalent. We don't
There's
really
not.
have something that's.
I
I mean, I suppose the closest that we have that's in sort of common parlance would be what, stud, but that doesn't really.
I think you're probably looking more towards like a honeypot for men, like so, like again, spy time men who were and they were quite commonly used. To seduce women who had information.
Yeah.
So I think there's actually another name that I'm not going to say that's similar to honeypot, but I'm not. You know, I think you can guess. But if you watch *Handmaid's Tale*, the Canadian, the guy who's seeking refuge in Canada, but he's from Hawaii, I believe, who tries to get Serena.
Yeah.
From *Handmaid's Tale*, that's what you would call him. So that would be the equivalent if you watch *Handmaid's Tale*. That's the equivalent. So it's again a young, attractive man who's trying to. Way less common though.
So we have to come up with something because it has to
do,
imply the same
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So it has to imply good looking, oozing sex, but dangerous. As the old saying goes, what is it? Mad, bad, and dangerous to know. Like it's that kind of
discarded Bon Jovi lyrics.
Yes, that's right. I don't know. I'm struggling a little bit with this. Let's think about this.
It's got to be something piercing as well, like something. Femme fatale is very cool because it's very romantic because it's very European. It's very You know, it's French, isn't it?
Yeah. I have a very limited usage of French,
so do
that's
I,
not going
like,
to help me.
Italian? No.
Yeah.
I know. Scusi.
Scusi.
Mi dispiace. I know basically my lines from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. There you
That's
go.
it.
There you go. Yeah, basically my Italian.
And Alfredo?
Yeah. my Italian is largely limited to like musical terms.
They're Pavarottis. They charm. But they charm, but it's not all, you know, they're loud. I don't know. They're very good projection.
What are these? I've tried to think of Italian musical terms now, like, you know, molto appassionato, or like, you know,
Cigato.
An
arpeggio.
Arpeggio. Got something down.
Very good.
I know I'm really struggling with this one. I actually find this one really hard.
Just a con man.
A comment. I suppose like you could take, you know, slightly similar characters that are slightly off. Like so. There are older English sort of definitions. So something like a cad, or a rogue, or a rogue, or a you know, a jack or something like, you know, like that sort of thing would be probably the closest. Like,
You made me think of like, what's the equivalent of like you just bringing up like Rogue and stuff made me think of like what's the equivalent of the guy who brings a guitar to a party and does Wonderwall? Like, and I was thinking, from now on, I'm going to call that guy a bard.
Chad.
It's a bard.
Bard.
Anyone who plays the guitar now is a bard. Yeah.
Well, bard, again, even in and of itself, is sort of has connotations of that sort of thing too, doesn't it?
Yeah. But what would you call them now? I think... No, I don't know. I don't know.
Let's go with roguish bard.
Roguish bard.
Yeah, a femme fatale and a roguish bard. I love it.
Just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it rolls
roguish
off the tongue.
bard.
Roguish bard. I gotta.
Femme fatale's got to be one of those beautiful like combinations of words.
And we
just get roguish bard.
Roguish bard.
It uses every muscle in your mouth to say, "I'm tired." Just say it.
I don't know. Like, I'm really struggling with that one.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with that one. All right. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. Leave them in Discord for what the male equivalent for a femme fatale should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The next one is cougar.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously, cougar is obviously entered more and more into the parlance recently. But the idea of an older woman who's out to it's kind of the older version of a femme fatale, really, isn't it? Like a cougar is a woman who's out to seduce younger men. Although cougar doesn't necessarily have connotations like good connotations. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you're right. You're right. Yeah.
You can be a. It can have slightly seedy or
which is
interesting.
Eh?
Like you could equally refer to an attractive older woman who was trying to get with younger men as a cougar, just as you could, it could also be slightly sad and seedy.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of cougars, like like
if you want to course in cougars, I don't know if it still exists. I don't think it does actually. But if you want to course in cougars, then go to Boogie Wonderland in Wellington on a Saturday night. I don't even know if it exists
from
anymore.
experience, is it?
This. Moving on. So, but that's an interesting point you bring up, because like what you've basically described is what historically a silver fox in a musical would be. But the roles reversed. But of course, when the roles are reversed, it's she.
Yeah, but you see, the funny thing is that a silver fox connotation is always positive. Like,
absolutely, that's what I mean.
You don't turn around and go like, you couldn't use that negatively.
No,
like you wouldn't be, oh, he's such a silver fox. Like whereas you could be like, oh, she's such a cougar. Like like it could be used negatively. And in fact, I would argue it's probably used more negatively than it is positive.
It is. It's quite often used in a way that's quite humorous, like not taken seriously, like you know, and like a bit condescendingly.
Yeah, a bit derogatory. Yeah. So like the only thing that jumped into my head whenever I was sitting there going, what do you call an older man who's trying to sleep with younger women? A creep. It's like literally the only thing that jumped into my head. Like I was like, I don't know, like
actually,
like
I don't know that giving a positive.
It's that, and maybe that is the male equivalent, because it's sort of like, I don't know that, like, it's weird because while like cougar can be seen as sort of a predator prey thing, or can be seen like as a slightly sad thing, oh, she's such a cougar, or a negative thing. I don't know that I don't know that there's any positive way you could spin an older man trying to sleep with younger women.
Yeah, I think though with cougar as well though, which we are sort of like forgetting, is that quite often cougar can be used to just describe an attractive older woman. Yeah. So there are obviously like there's another term for that, which is
siren now.
Yeah, there's another term for that, which is also really popular. But cougar's a bit like, you don't necessarily have to be like, a cougar doesn't have to be trying to get someone who's like, but a cougar, dramatically younger than them.
But a cougar someone who's implies
noticeably older,
predatory.
It
like
does,
it implies that
Well, it's where the cradle snatcher.
Really like
cradle snatcher term.
Yeah,
like,
maybe
often is
cradle
used.
snatcher.
Yeah.
Maybe that's maybe that we can make that a
It's just a
masculine equivalent.
hideous term, really. Yeah.
Yeah, like but it implies actively kind of, not
It does.
she happens to be with somebody that's younger, but implies that whole Mrs. Robinson kind of
It
like
does. That's it.
yeah. It's a throwback.
It's a
for you.
throwback. It's a reference I haven't heard in a long time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's probably the most recognizable cougar.
True. Yeah. True.
Yeah, like
True.
I'm trying to think.
Oh,
Or
pop culture.
Stifler's mum.
Oh,
Or like
true.
like those
Yeah.
those are all sort of examples of cougars. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, all right,
Yeah,
let us know
yeah.
what you think.
Yeah.
Other than creep, that's as best as we got.
Yeah.
What about and final one I have is actually bizarrely I can find I could think of a whole heap more for women than I could for men, but like the other one I'm going to use is ingenue.
Yes. Yeah.
So an ingenue is sort of the opposite from a femme fatale. So an ingenue is it's usually used in a theatrical term. So it's usually the young, wide-eyed, innocent young girl who's starting out in her theatrical career, or is who tends to play the young, wide-eyed, innocent role, usually the romantic lead. That sort of thing,
or the character that's vying for the attention of the
male,
yeah,
against the femme fatale. So what's the male equivalent to an ingenue? Something that implies young, innocent, wide-eyed, kind of,
child. Whoa, it's hard, isn't it?
This is what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
so like, this is what got me thinking, right? Is that, when we talk about, and I don't mean to go serious here, but do you know when we talk about like gender equality and stuff like that, and we talk about, and we like to consider ourselves, and we all like to think of ourselves here as being really into gender equality and all of that sort of stuff. But there are these sort of entrenched terms that define appropriate things to be at different stages of your life, or depending on who you are, based on your gender.
Yeah, 100%.
And this is why it's so hard. Like, and legitimately, one of the weirdest things I found about ingenue, more than anything else, but definitely ingenue, one of the weirdest things I found about this was me trying to picture somebody I can think of who would be an ingenue. So, like, Michael Cera is probably the closest I can come to like a male equivalent of an ingenue.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow, good shout. Yeah.
Like, do you know, that's probably...
Although you obviously haven't seen his cameo in Twin Peaks.
No, but, his early stuff is, him and Scott Pilgrim is probably the
100%,
closest to,
yeah.
like, a male ingenue, which is what made Scott Pilgrim. And for those of you who don't like Scott Pilgrim, you're dumb.
I agree, it's great.
Scott Pilgrim is awesome.
Comics are great too.
Yeah. That whole idea of flipping the roles of
And
Ramona.
by the way,
and,
you're meant to be critical of Scott. You're actually meant to be critical. Like, it was written in a way that you're meant to be quite critical of how he approaches every situation and how he deals with the exes.
because he deals with it poorly.
He
the
deals with
whole
it very
time.
poorly, and he deals with women poorly, and his ideas on women are terrible.
Yeah.
Like, and it's meant to be, and you're not meant to think Michael Cera is like a great character. Like, he's a very flawed. I'm not saying he's a terrible person, but he is flawed. Like, he's heavily flawed.
Scott, yeah. Like,
yeah.
And what I loved about it, right, is that whole flip of male and female. Because normally that would be the female role. Yeah, and the Ramona Flowers kind of role would be the male silver fox.
Yeah,
who
yeah.
slightly older man who's a bit who's put together, who's interesting, who's all of that sort of stuff, and the young woman would be trying to prove herself or whatever through Grease, prime example of that.
Yes.
Whereas that it's sort of flipped on its head, and so he's the best thing I can think of to
100%.
what would be a male ingenue. But I'm trying to think, the closest term I can think of that's in common parlance, and we tend to use it with men, is geek.
Oh, yeah.
Is the closest I can think of to male ingenue. Because geek has also moved a little bit away from... I mean, geek now has more positive connotations than it did
Thanks,
before.
Big Bang
Thanks, Big-
Theory.
But it has more positive comment and people
It does.
owning the fact that they're geeks. You'll
Yeah.
now have people say, "Oh, well, I'm a bit of a geek."
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas, whenever I was at school, it was purely a derogatory term.
Whereas when you were at school, Dr. Seuss was still writing. We're still coining the word.
Yeah. Like, that's right. Back in the Punic Wars. I think, the closest male equivalent I can think of is geek. And that has come about, again, as much as we mock it, that has come about because of Big Bang Theory. Essentially, they're all ingenues. And
They are.
Penny is the femme fatale, kind of. It depends on which episode you watch. Sometimes she's a femme fatale, sometimes she's a cougar. Sometimes she's
Depends how sexist the writers are feeling that day.
Yeah. But that's the closest I can think of to male ingenues. Is kind of geek.
Yeah.
As weird as that sounds. Because I think the other weird thing about geek is geek has moved away from... So geek used to be somebody either that was very intelligent or somebody that was massively into some form of pop culture.
And
So-
we're quite dorky about it.
yeah, like, massive, like, Trekkies or, like, that sort of stuff. But geek has kind of moved away from that. Like,
It
you now no
has.
longer have to have, like, a enduring love of Doctor Who
No.
to be a geek. Like, and in fact, people, what seems to me to have happened is that people who love those kinds of things are now defining themselves as other stuff. So it only used to be like Trekkies, right? So they were their, sort of own subculture. But now you have Whovians and, like, like they're almost...
Are they Whovians? They're fans of Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, that's right. But it's moved. People have moved away. Who are in those niche groups seem to have moved away from calling themselves geeks. Like they now are no longer, like they're almost distancing themselves from the geek thing.
But you also get a lot of gatekeeping now. People who are, and it's really funny, hey, it's gotten to the point where it's so accepted that people are now gatekeeping being a geek.
I know.
Like, it's amazing.
It's insane, isn't
Yeah,
it? Like,
what a time to be alive.
I know.
Yeah, the internet's made that good as well because people can converge and share their hobbies online. Whereas you know in the past people would be living in small towns where they wouldn't be able to interact with people with similar. Yeah.
The other one that would probably work for men, and you see this a lot in American films, is Country Boy. It's probably the closest to ingenue.
Yeah.
The good old
small fish
country
out of
boy
water.
who goes to the big city and has morals. And
I don't understand what these city folk are doing. I don't, who's just sort of like is so ignorant about like who somehow like in countless films bumbles his way through like a pride parade and he's so confused and it's like what's going on and it's like terrifying.
He's never come across anyone who's lied before in their life, that
because the South is just so pure.
Yeah, that's right. Because in the country we don't do that sort of stuff.
No, we don't.
It's only town folk that do that kind of crap.
Yeah.
Like good old 1950s values. Like
And the corruption of those values in the city.
Actually, brilliant.
The dark cities, the
brilliantly
corrupt
enough.
cities.
Watch Blast from the Past. Great film. With Brendan Fraser in it.
I love Brendan Fraser. When did the film come out?
This would be
Long
90s.
time.
This is the one where Blast from the Past is one his parents, Christopher Walken, plays his dad.
Oh, wow.
He's 1950s. They really scared about Cuban Missile Crisis, all of that sort of stuff. All of that sort of stuff starts to come out as this goes on, and Dad builds a nuclear bunker under their house, and so there's this big scare because a plane crashes into the house, and so he moves everyone into the bunker, and the bunker locks for I think it's like 30 years or 40 God. 20, 30 years.
Fallout, Alabama,
so he's a baby. He gets born in this bunker. And so he's only lived in this like 1950s-esque bunker. And he comes out like into 90s New York and like,
What is it with Brendan Fraser being in films?
Meets Alicia Silverstone and like,
he seems to love being in films where he ends up in New York but like completely out of place. Like George of the Jungle, anyone? The same thing happens. He goes to New York and he is George of the Jungle.
But again,
and he's very confused.
That kind of weird male ingenue thing. Like, the whole kind of like, well, no, I've got, good, solid values. I enjoy listening to Perry Como, not like, this modern rap crap, like that sort of stuff.
That's stubborn. Yeah.
So, geek. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? Like,
I think
Because
even
again, if you go down like the country boy thing, the problem is that like
it's quite specific, whereas ingenue is quite a broad.
Yeah, ingenue doesn't imply moral value.
No,
it implies innocence, but it doesn't imply moral value.
Maybe in naivety and
yeah. Okay, let us know down in the comments what you think. So I look forward to seeing what some of your ideas. So we had Silver Fox, which we thought Silver Siren was a good one.
Yeah.
Silver Fox, Femme Fatale, Ingenue,
yes,
and what was the other one we did? Femme Fatale, Ingenue, Cougar.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think the equivalents for the opposite sex are. Excellent. Okay, moving on into Uncanny Valley.
Uncanny Valley.
Okay, Uncanny Valley. So, what are we going to talk about for Uncanny Valley? This is sort of coming from you.
So, this is a little bit different. So we have been seeing a lot of this recently. So we've been seeing a lot of films, and there's still more to come out about the music, basically music or the music industry or artists being adapted into film.
Yeah.
So last night, producer Caroline and I saw the film Yesterday.
Yeah.
Many of you would have seen the trailers for it, and it looked great. Like, it looked really, really great. And I'm not about to say that it was a bad film, but we found it really disappointing and painfully average.
Yeah.
And it followed a lot of the tropes of... It was just very by the numbers, and it was very... the script was surprisingly inadequate from someone like Richard Curtis, who, as we all know, he was actually born in Wellington, but he's written some incredible things. Some really iconic films about a generation, like Love Actually and Notting Hill. And
was he Maybe Baby as well?
Maybe Baby was Ben Elton.
Oh, Ben Elton.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So who, as we were talking about earlier, Ben Elton would have been fantastic as a writer
writing
on this
partner.
film.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it, and it really frustrated us because I don't really want to spoil too much about the film, but there's so much lost potential with this film. And of course, if you don't know, it's about it's basically the simple premise, and you can get this from watching the trailer, is about a world where the Beatles never existed, whereas there's one person, our lead character, who remembers the Beatles. So he starts doing the Beatles music and becoming very famous for it because, of course, it's great music. And so what ends up happening is you're watching this film, and he's performing some songs by the Beatles, and again he's performing some of the most like middle of the road music by the Beatles. And as we all know, the Beatles went on to solidify their legacy through creating some genuinely interesting and groundbreaking music.
Yeah.
So the film takes up half its time with songs that are very, very generic, like She Loves You or All You Need Is Love.
Do you know what I love? And now, so this is where this interesting conversation comes from, because I really wanted to see this film, and I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen the trailer.
Yeah.
So there's a whole heap of things in my head that I was kind of like, this is what I think the movie's going to be about, like as you do with trailers and stuff like that. And this would be a really cool concept, and this would be, everything else like that. Which you've seen the film, and you're not going to spoil anything, but you've seen the film.
Yeah.
And already in our conversations, you've kind of been like, it interests me when you say She Loves You. Did you say it does in there? Which, like, and we were talking about this a little bit before in terms of choice of music. Now, if I was to sit there, like if one of my kids came to me with She Loves You as a composition for a level 1 composition, I'd be like, yeah, okay. But it's really basic.
Yeah, very simplistic.
It's really, really basic. If you were to release that now as a recording artist, people would be like, what is this? If that song had never existed, if it wasn't associated with the Beatles, even if the Beatles wrote everything else, didn't write She Loves You, and you were to release that now, like, the people would just go,
oh, they'd go,
what's that?
Because because the film, because the Beatles music is so of its time, and because they sort of they really popularized the basic structure of a pop song. Like, we forget, like, they really solidified the 3-minute or 2.5-minute pop song, and verse, chorus, verse, and coda or whatever, and like, so they So the fact that that's been like over the last sort of 5-6 decades now.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been a long
Yep.
time. That structure for a pop song has been modified. It's been grown upon. It's been done to a point where it makes the original Beatles music look very, very of its time. And that's not to say it's not good songwriting, because it is. And however,
Well, it depends on
some
what
of
part
it.
of the Beatles you're
yeah,
looking
some
at.
of it. But however, again, if you were to release that music today, I don't think it would be that utterly remarkable, unless you did some of them more out there, like, you know.
But even that, and this is the thing, right? Is that I look at the Beatles a little bit with my kids as songwriters. And their growth as songwriters and stuff like that. And they're a phenomenal band, and they're phenomenal in what they did, and they're phenomenal in how much their style changed. I mean, you've got to remember, the Beatles were only together for 9 years, from go to woe. They were and a big chunk of that, they were, or a chunk of that, they were in Hamburg and stuff. Like, they only released albums for about, I think off the top of my head, they're only releasing albums for about 6 years. Like, really.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, their growth as songwriters, if you go from I Want to Hold Your Hand through to, Let It Be, or like, I mean, just phenomenal growth as songwriters. But one of the amazing things about the Beatles is that what they were doing was so far ahead of its time for the time. Like, if you were to do that stuff now, not only would it not really be ahead of its time, it would be considered to be retro.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
It's like,
Mm.
like the use of feedback, the use of distortion, the use of all of those kinds of things, which they largely were the first people to do. Like, they spent, they're
And
far
popular
more,
music, yeah.
they're far more influential for what they did in the studio.
Yeah.
Than
Yeah.
sort of really their songwriting. Like, they're popular for their
absolutely.
songwriting, but it's what they did in the studio that was far more influential.
Yeah.
And I think you were just making the point, and you were making the point earlier on, that I think that if a large amount of their stuff came out, especially the singles and that sort of stuff, if they were to come out now, people it would sort of, I think, be met with a resounding meh.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. The whole film was trying to be a fan service, and I hated that. I didn't like the fact that it was constantly trying to be like, these are the greatest songs ever. It was trying to be a fan service, and it felt like a film made by people who didn't love the Beatles, because the songs that they did only scratched the surface. Like, for example, they didn't perform any of the more interesting songs. Eleanor Rigby was never performed. Strawberry Fields was never... It was touched on, but it was never performed.
But you were saying to me they barely touched the White Album.
Barely.
They barely touched Revolver.
They did the worst song from the White Album.
Which is...
Obladi,
Oblada. Yep.
Yeah.
Which is the worst Beatles song.
Yeah, 100%.
Hands down.
And they friggin' end the film with it. Sorry, spoiler,
hands
but,
down,
yeah.
the worst Beatles song.
I couldn't believe it as a king. And it felt like the film started really well, and it was like, yeah, okay. But it was like they didn't know how to finish it.
That's what really worried me watching the trailer. Is whenever I was watching the trailer, I was like, this is a great premise.
Yeah.
Like, great premise. But do you know when you watch those trailers where you have a great premise and you're like, is there anything more here than just the premise? Like, if you get what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I felt it was heavily implied in the trailer that the reason that the Beatles didn't exist wasn't that because the Beatles themselves didn't exist, but because for whatever reason there was a left turn rather than a right, one of those sliding doors thing.
Yeah.
And them, for whatever reason their music didn't catch on, or, they didn't sign whenever they did, or they didn't, I don't know, meet Brian Epstein or what, for whatever reason they didn't hit the mass market. And I thought there was going to be the whole tension, or there was the implied tension that then people sort of essentially playing, Paul McCartney, John Lennon, that sort of stuff were going to appear and be like, this dude's just pinched our music. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it'll be interesting when you see the
that
film.
That was going to be like the, the whole tension.
They don't deal with it in a very interesting way. Is all I'll say.
Which is disappointing.
It is. It's really disappointing.
Because I just watched it and I was like, because I am a massive Beatles fan. I am a massive Beatles fan. I love Revolver. I love the White
Yeah.
Album. I love they're still brilliant albums, and they are tinged with nostalgia. It's not. It's
100%,
not.
yeah.
I am not blind to the fact that if I hadn't been introduced to them younger and that sort of stuff, I'm not blind to the fact that I'd probably be pretty meh about it. Do you know what I mean? I don't think the songwriting's so phenomenal that, with a few exceptions, there are some brilliant songs. But I think that what I found really interesting in what you were talking about is that they sort of skip over what, at least in my mind, if you talk to the majority of musicians or you talk to the majority of people who love the Beatles, they skipped over actually what are really important or really seminal songs for the Beatles. Like going to Obla Di Obla Da as distinct from, for example, Helter Skelter.
Exactly. Or While My Guitar Gently Weeps or
yes,
something.
or Within Me, Without You. Or Tomorrow Never Knows.
Yeah.
Or,
Or A Day in the Life, for goodness sake.
I mean, again, I was saying to you earlier on, I was watching an NME thing from, this would have been early 2000s.
I think I've seen the one you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's at a festival somewhere, and they're basically talking to a whole heap of big, English sort of bands at the time. So you've got Kasabian, you've got Kaiser Chiefs.
Probably had Libertines. And stuff.
You've got the Libertines, you've got...
Enemy Darlings.
all of that kind of, Eagles of Death Metal, I think, were there as well. But, all of that kind of, real... the post Britpop kind of movement in music, and they were talking about the Beatles because I think it was the anniversary. It was something like the 40th or 50th anniversary of 50th, I think it was of the White Album, I think, or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They were talking about the Beatles and the influence that the Beatles had on them, the influence that that sort of stuff had on their careers, that sort of thing, and what their favourite song was. Almost without fail, Tomorrow Never Knows.
Absolutely.
Was the song that people sort of picked as being the most influential song.
It's pretty much like shoegaze, dream pop.
Yeah.
Like back in the...
Or the guys from, I think it was Kasabian, were sitting there and talking about the fact that regardless of anything else, the way that they mixed Abbey Road or the White Album, was insane. The engineering was insane. And they were saying that they were like, no studio, any studio that you walk into, the sound engineer has a copy of the White Album or whatever that they refer to for like how they, it's just, it's that like, it's that seminal in what they did. And so it surprises me to a certain extent that they were like, nah.
Kasabian were playing an open air festival, right?
You have to explain this because this was so funny because that message yesterday was hilarious. Yeah.
So Kasabian, it's become a bit of a meme on the internet that for years now that they blow the... You've got to remember this period of music was met by people who rued the end of guitar rock.
Yeah.
So it was that laddish, and you see it all the time in England, especially that laddish guitar rock culture.
Yeah.
And you have that with like the Libertines and the Kaiser Chiefs and Kasabian and so it's become a running joke that whenever Kasabian play inside, they blast the roof off because of how hard they rock, and how banging their tunes are. Great bunch of lads who play great, proper guitar rock.
Yeah.
So, and it's basically like, I think, because James, you have a convertible, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. So whenever he listens to the Kasabian, he has to put the roof down.
Yeah, just in case it blows off.
Yeah,
It's you've got to be careful.
Yeah.
Like of a surprise Kasabian song, because otherwise all of a sudden you'll find the ceiling raining down around your ears.
Yeah, exactly. And like whenever they perform at the Millennium Stadium, and this is during like the Olympics, they had to retract the ceiling.
It's true.
Which takes like 20 minutes, but they had to do it, and it was a huge cost to the taxpayer. But they had to do it in order to avoid blasting the roof off because Kasabian.
Well, it was like you yesterday. You had to open the windows because somebody put Kasabian on at work.
And
it was like,
and it was
you had to open the windows because otherwise you had to let that sound out. Otherwise, the roof would have just taken off.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got to be careful with these guys. Yeah.
All right. So on the only scale that matters, what are you going to give yesterday?
5.
5. Okay. Would you recommend people see it?
I was going to say only if you're a huge Beatles fan, but I'm a huge Beatles fan. And
Yeah.
I would wait for the Blu-ray release.
Okay, so one to see when it comes out on Netflix or whatever.
Not worth seeing.
Don't bother going to the film.
There's nothing about the film that means you need to see it on a big screen. If you've got a decent sound system at home, you'll be fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right, 30-second waffle, and we're going to crack through this because Anthony has to get to football.
Guts to go.
Okay.
All right.
Right, here we go. First one. This is going to be
Anthony.
the fastest one you've ever seen.
Instagram at Deborah. Oh, hi, Deborah.
Yeah.
Okay. Why a job in theatre is not a sustainable career.
All right. Here we go. Well, it's largely true. Okay.
Job in theatre is not a sustainable career because you will you're constantly going from show to show, so you cannot guarantee that you will always be picked for that show or that you'll always be involved in that show. So it's very much a cyclical thing. Also, a career in theatre is not sustainable because you will just grow sick of the people. Safety wink. But yeah, it's. I of course disagree with that. A career in theatre is absolutely sustainable, but it's a lot harder in small places like in New Zealand because it's a lot smaller and the opportunities.
Who you know, what you know, not what you know.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely who you know.
Right,
And,
boom, high five, done.
Yeah, politics and all
Right,
that shit.
next. Okay, this is from Caroline. Why heating in winter is unnecessary and wasteful? Okay, well, this will be a very easy question to answer. Okay, heating in winter is completely wasteful and unnecessary because your body is perfectly capable, unless you're down to hypothermic temperatures, of thermoregulating. So you just need to harden up and put some more blankets on. Secondly, for any of you that have been to see Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, it doesn't matter how cold it gets; it's absolutely fine. You just sit there.
It's an Easter egg for the
shiver.
cast.
It's an Easter egg. So you don't need heaters. Heaters suck. They're too loud. You can't hear the dialogue. You just no heaters. No heaters. Heating is wasteful. Yeah.
Nice. No, very good. Very good.
I've just triggered about 6 people.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Here we go. I love me some heaters. I hate being cold.
This is from James.
It is.
Star Wars is the most overrated film series / IP in cinematic / gaming history.
Excellent. Sort of on the fence about this one.
Yeah. Star Wars is the most overrated IP in cinematic blah, 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 in history because it's literally it's time and its place. It was the perfect time. It was at the edge of the space race when things were starting to die down. But it's a space opera, so it's not truly about sci-fi. People liked it because it was Indiana Jones in space. So it's incredibly overrated because the writing is appalling, and the people who say that the writing of the new ones is not up to scratch with the originals. You guys are looking at the originals through rose-tinted glasses, my friends, because the writing was appalling back then too. Better, but not great. It was still a space opera for people just to enjoy. They were the action films of their days. Like,
boom!
yeah.
Flying through! Right,
Flying
last
through.
one. Here we go. See, I
This
told
is
you,
30-second
fastest
waffle.
30-second waffle out. This is from End. Why was Nintendogs the greatest technical achievement of the 21st century? Whew. I'm really going to struggle with this one. Okay. Nintendogs was the greatest achievement of the 21st century because it allowed you to own a digital pet, which meant that you no longer had to keep a real pet, which brought down the wastefulness of your carbon footprint, you see? So owning a digital pet didn't matter whether you killed it because it was digital sprites. So it was fine, didn't shit everywhere. Greatest technological achievement of the 21st century. Boom.
Nice
Done.
work. Done.
There you
Done.
go. Fastest 30-second
Yeah.
waffle in history.
30-second waffle, over. Boom.
So Anthony has to get to football. So very quickly, leave your answers down there in the comments or on the Discord for all of the things that we talked about what's on top. Come over and hit us up on the streams on a Sunday night or a Wednesday night. Currently, we're looking at Dishonored 2 and Spyro, although we may be looking at Detroit Become Human.
Yeah.
So thank you once again for joining us. Thank you for being so patient with us being so busy. And we will see you next week.
Thank you, goodbye, and good luck to your family.